Anterina ny fiarabanantsika rehetra mpanaraka ny fandarana votoa sy filazantsara i Madagascar. Avy any Allemagne ny vahintsika amin'ity anio ity dia Andriamatoa Clemens izay mpanolontsaina amin'ny fanentanana sy amin'ny kalitaony fitantanana ny tetikasa ao amin'ny SAF FJKM. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Mami. Thank you for the interview.
What are you doing in Madagascar?
What am I doing in Madagascar? I'm here to support SAF FJKM, which is the humanitarian and the development arm of the church FJKM. So we have programs in volunteerism, we have programs in food security, nutrition, health, WASH, and in livelihoods, agriculture.
You were talking about the volunteers. How about those volunteers?
The volunteer program is a cooperation between the German Protestant church, Diakonie Katastrophenhilfe, for whom I have been working the past 6 years as regional director for Eastern and for Southern Africa. And we have developed in 2013 the idea over here to have volunteers to support disaster risk reduction for little coastal villages along the coasts of Madagascar. Those volunteers are in general members of the church FJKM. They are active in the church and they receive a 1, sometimes 2 days workshop, a technical training where they learn what to do in a case of a disaster, and there we have been focusing mainly on cyclones. It was very interesting that in the very much beginning when we started to work with SAF and we worked with FJKM in the collaboration for this program, and we went to the field and we asked the people what they are mostly in need of. We found that the first 10 days after a cyclone hits the coast is the one where people need to be structured and need to be organized. So the idea came out that we said, well, okay, while people are waiting that perhaps some outside help comes, why can't they organize themselves? So we built up a 4-pillar system. These 4 pillars are the protection. This means to children, to elderly people, to handicapped people, so that those people are better guarded and people do not disappear. Secondly, we have the data collection, because everybody needs to know what exactly happened in the village, what exactly happened in the region. So people are trained in how to collect data and how also to transmit this data so that we here in Antananarivo, we know what is happening and we can contact donors. We are in coordination with the government and so on, so that everybody knows what is the situation. It's very important because otherwise nobody will help, right? The third one is more a practical one for younger people in the villages, and it focuses on repair and rehabilitation. You have trees which have been falling, you have inundations, you have flooded areas and so on. Those people are trained in what can we do and how can we maintain or reopen roads, paths, a marketplace where people can assemble and messages can be given to the people. So it's very important that first of all it's the roads and the paths, and then afterwards it's the individual houses where an old lady is living and she can't repair it herself, so people are just trying to help and to set up this thing. And the last one is also a very important one. It's the distribution pillar. The distribution is what is going to be given towards the people and how to distribute it. But on the other side, it is also about to collect for example, in times of harvest, some rice, put it beside and have it then ready for the disasters. We have now nearly 20,000 volunteers in the coastal communities and here in Antananarivo, and we are growing steadily. So this means everybody who is seeing this now should be really encouraged also to ask his pastor, to ask at ZAF, to receive those trainings, because these trainings, as I said, it's a one-day training, gives skills towards the people in how to respond on a disaster. One thing which is important for the volunteerism is as well, it's bénévole. This means it's free of any costs. It's free of costs to us, but it's also free for the volunteer, right? So this means not awaiting that there is an allowance or any income and salary. It's not. We are helping. And that's exactly what Jesus has been praying us, right? Help your neighbors. So we are giving those skills. The program itself is an FJKM program. It's not a SAF program, as often perhaps wrongly understood. SAF gives the technical skills. We do the trainings, we organize the trainers of trainers, which are also volunteers. So we have started over here, as in other countries as well, a large movement of volunteers, and I hope it's going to grow. And I spend lots of time on that, in just trying to talk with the people and to get it going. To find supporters who can sponsor, for example, T-shirts and other materials which we need for our volunteers.
Is there anything else that you are doing apart from working with those volunteers?
Yes, the volunteers take a part of my time, but not all of it. I came over here because I was asked to work with SAF on the resource mobilization. Resource mobilization is nothing else than to write proposals, to design proposals. So this means what programming is done in SAF. As I said before, we have WASH, we have health, we have nutrition, agriculture, disaster risk reduction, and so on. Needs to be formulated on the document to be presented to a donor, right, like the United Nations or the European Union or USAID, in a technical way that those donors are also funding it. So resource mobilization is a part of my work over here, of my daily engagement in writing and working out proposals, so that proposals are interesting, that somebody is also giving us money for it, but on the other side to support the population. The other thing what is part of my engagement over here is quality management. As you hear, I speak English. I speak better English than I do French. Therefore, we do it in English, this interview. Is clearly that the majority of donors are working in English. It's very less which are working only in French, and therefore I am looking on one side in the reports, but on the other side also in the implementations, in the distributions, in the work with the people, where we have our agents which are working with communities, where we are setting up village saving groups and so on, where we are trying to also to cover standards. We have the core humanitarian standards in the work of our humanitarian responses, but on the other side also to be accountable, to be transparent, right? To have a proper reporting and so on. So I'm working on this quality management, as we call this, as well. So, and then beside that, I do reports, I do trainings. I ask sometimes questions and say, okay, why are you doing this like that? Have you perhaps rethought that there are other ways? I have 30 years of experience in the humanitarian responses. That's what I'm doing, and so I hope that my support over here to ZAF and to FJKM is somehow helpful.
How do you see the role of the church and humanitarian activities?
Well, I would say the church has an obligation to engage in humanitarian work. It should be based on the four humanitarian principles, which are humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. So this means we are working in a way that we are looking that the humanitarian suffering is addressed. We have an area, for example, which is flooded, or there was an earthquake, or there is a fire, or there's drought in the south, and we address it. Right. I think that is very necessary. The independence means that we are working independent from political, racial, religious, and ideologic natures. Right. So this means we can't be carried on because we're doing it only for this part of people. Right. The impartiality means that we are prioritizing the humanitarian needs. This means you have a village which had a cyclone which has passed, a part of the village is flooded, and so on. So we are really looking into where are the most urgent needs and how can we respond, while also doing this in coordination with other actors. So we have the Red Cross, for example, which is very active. We have the authorities with the BNGRC, yes, which is active, and so on. So we try to coordinate, to work with others, but on the other side to prioritize where are which needs, right? And then and we have finally the independence, how a church should also work, and that means that we are not used. We're not used by politics, we're not used by military, we are not used by economic forces. We just help the people on the ground. If we as church are following this, then we have support in whatever times, whoever is ruling, because that's important for us as church as well. We do a lot of evangelization in the church, but on the other side we also need to look into the humanitarian needs which we have here in the country. The humanitarian needs in Madagascar are large. It's unfortunately one of the 10 poorest countries of this world, right? The average of people are earning under $1.90 per day, which barely makes them to survive. And that's what you can see everywhere. You can see it here in town, you can see it in the rural areas, but it's a problem. And that's exactly for what SAF is there, right? And for what SAF is a part of FJKM, right? And FJKM is reacting on that. Professional.
Very interesting. What is your last message?
My last message is, well, I hope that Madagascar becomes more green than it is. It has a fantastic diversity in nature with animals, with the environment and so on. But unfortunately, it's incredible how many forests are burnt down and how less people are caring for the environment. And I would really wish myself that there's more orientation on that there is more protection of the environment, because you have such a fantastic diversity over here, which you don't find everywhere on the world. But you are so near on the edge of losing this, and it would be very, very sad, right? It attracts people from outside to come over here, but on the other side, it's also for yourself, for your own culture, for your tradition, and so on. It's important, and I hope that we at SAF FJKM we can take and play a part in that. Right, we are working with the civil societies and so on, and in collaboration. So therefore, I hope that this green way will continue.
Thank you so much for accepting to be our guest for today. Bye bye.
Thank you for letting me talk.